My name is Donna Passmore, and I'm 29 years old. 4 days ago, I was supposed to be on my honeymoon. Instead, I'm sitting alone in what should have been a luxury suite, staring at a half-empty bottle of wine and trying to understand how my entire life detonated in front of 150 people. The wedding had been perfect right up until it wasn't. I had spent over a year planning that day. The garden venue, the live band, the premium open bar. Every detail had been exactly what Mark Reynolds, my boyfriend of 3 years and fiancé of 8 months, said he wanted. I paid for most of it. I work in tech sales and do well enough that I could afford the wedding without destroying my savings, but that didn't mean it was cheap. It meant it mattered. When I walked down the aisle, I genuinely believed I was walking toward the safest future of my life. Mark looked nervous, but in the sweet way grooms are supposed to look. His smile was tight, his hands shaking slightly. I remember thinking he was overwhelmed by the moment. I remember thinking that meant something. The vows went smoothly. My voice didn't even shake. I felt proud of us, of what we'd built, of the future I thought we were sealing. Then the officiant reached that line. If anyone has reason why these two should not be joined in marriage, speak now, or forever hold your peace. It was supposed to be ceremonial, a formality, something people chuckled about later. Instead, a woman stood up. She was sitting near the back, mid-30s, professional looking, calm in a way that didn't belong in a room full of champagne and white roses. "I have something," she said. The entire crowd froze. I felt Mark's hand tighten around mine, too tight. The woman walked slowly down the aisle holding a manila envelope. She didn't look at Mark. She looked directly at me. "Read this," she said, handing it over. "You deserve to know before this becomes legal." Mark leaned in urgently. "Donna, don't. She's crazy. I don't even know her." But the woman wasn't hysterical. She wasn't angry. She looked tired. Inside the envelope were screenshots. Hundreds of messages, explicit ones, intimate ones, messages between Mark and a contact saved as D. 6 months of planning meetups, hiding texts, lying to me. Photos of Mark with another woman kissing in restaurants, in hotel rooms. The last thing was a handwritten note. "I'm his wife. He told me it was over. It wasn't. I thought you should know before he ruins your life the way he ruined mine." I looked at Mark. "Care to explain?" I asked. His face was red, his mouth opened and closed, but nothing coherent came out. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I turned to the officiant. "We're done here." Mark grabbed my hand. "Please, let me explain privately." "No," I said. "Everyone deserves to know." I held up the papers. "My fiancé has been having an affair for 6 months. The whispers exploded. His mother rushed forward, furious. "You can't do this. Everyone's here. You're humiliating him." "He humiliated himself," I replied. Mark collapsed into tears. His friends surrounded him. I walked out of my own wedding, past the decorations I paid for, past the car with the just married sign, and drove away alone. 4 days later, I'm still processing. I woke up the morning after the non-wedding with that hollow feeling people describe, but you don't really understand until it happens to you. It wasn't sadness exactly. It was shock mixed with the slow, sick realization that the life I had planned, every spreadsheet, every shared joke, every when we're married, had evaporated in a single afternoon. The first thing that hit me wasn't even emotional. It was financial. I sat at the small desk in the hotel suite with my laptop open, coffee untouched, pulling up contracts one by one. Venue, catering, photography, band, flowers, dress, tux, honeymoon. Each line item felt like another quiet punch to the chest. The venue deposit non-refundable. The ceremony had technically started. Catering food, already prepped, partially served during the chaos. Photography paid in full because they showed up and documented everything, including the moment my life imploded at the altar. The band had played for nearly an hour while people whispered and stared. Flowers were custom ordered, non-refundable. My dress was custom fitted, non-refundable. His suit, same story. The honeymoon was the only partial mercy. I'd booked a week in the Caribbean, managed to claw back 60% because I canceled just inside the window, still lost thousands. By the time I finished adding everything up, the number on the screen felt unreal. Tens of thousands of dollars gone. Money I had saved. Money I could have used for a down payment for travel for a future that now didn't exist. And Mark's parents. They had contributed exactly nothing. Early in the planning, they'd claimed financial hardship. I'd accepted that without resentment. I had believed we were building something together, not keeping score. That afternoon, his mother called me. Her voice was sharp, clipped, already angry. You need to stop spreading lies about my son. I almost laughed. Almost. Lies, I asked. You embarrassed him in front of everyone, she said. 150 people. How do you think he's supposed to show his face now? I felt something cold settle in my chest. He cheated on me for 6 months. It was a mistake, she snapped. You don't destroy someone's life over a mistake. A 6-month affair isn't a mistake, I said evenly. It's a series of choices. There was a pause, then the words that permanently changed how I saw her. Well, she said you obviously weren't meeting his needs. I hung up without saying goodbye. Mark, meanwhile, was spiraling. My phone lit up nonstop apologies, declarations of love, accusations, pleas, rage, regret, all of it tangled together like emotional shrapnel. I'm so sorry, one text read. I love you, another. You didn't have to humiliate me like that. How could you do this in front of everyone? I replied once. I didn't humiliate you. The truth did. We're done. Communicate through lawyers about the apartment lease. That was it. He lost it. He called me from his mother's phone after I blocked his number. We can fix this, he said, voice frantic. Couples therapy. I'll cut her off completely. You should have cut her off before planning to marry me, I replied. You're being so cold, he said. Don't you care about what we had? I cared about what I thought we had, I said. That turned out to be fiction. Then came the entitlement. I need you to tell people this was mutual, he said, that we both decided to call it off. You owe me that. I owe you nothing, I said, and ended the call. Later that evening, a message came through from an unfamiliar number. It was the woman from the wedding, the wife. She apologized for the timing, said she'd only discovered the affair was still ongoing 2 days earlier. She'd tracked down our wedding information through her husband's email. She told me Mark had promised to leave her, had told her it was over. It wasn't. My name came up in recent messages. Wedding plans. Lies layered on top of lies. I'm divorcing him, she wrote. I'm sorry you found out this way, but I couldn't let you marry him without knowing. I stared at the message for a long time. Then there was the apartment. Our names were both on the lease. I made 3 times what Mark did. We'd agreed early on that I'd pay 70% of the rent, $2,100 of the $3,000, because it felt fair. At the time, it had felt like partnership. Now it felt like leverage. My lawyer laid out my options calmly, professionally, as if my heart wasn't still bruised. Buy him out, break the lease and split the penalty, or keep paying my share while one of us moved out. I sent him a formal offer through my lawyer. I'd pay him $2,500 to sign over the lease and vacate within 30 days. Generous, all things considered. His lawyer countered with $8,000 and all shared furniture. I said no. That was when I realized something important. The wedding ending wasn't the end of the war. It was just the opening battle. I didn't expect Mark to take responsibility. What I didn't expect was how quickly the narrative would flip, how fast I'd go from the woman who walked away from a cheating fiancé to the villain in someone else's carefully rewritten story. It started quietly. A friend texted me asking if I was okay, but there was something hesitant in the wording, like they were testing the ground. Another asked almost casually whether things between Mark and I had been more complicated than people realized. I brushed it off at first. Grief does weird things to social circles. People want to stay neutral. I understood that. Then I heard what was being said. Mark's mother had been talking. His friends had been talking. And Mark himself, desperate, cornered, furious, had been talking the most. According to him, I was cold, controlling, financially abusive. He hadn't cheated because he wanted to. He'd cheated because he felt trapped. Trapped by the woman who paid most of the rent because she earned more. By the woman who never touched his bank account, never restricted his spending, never once monitored where he went or who he talked to. By the woman who trusted him enough to plan a wedding. The whisper campaign spread in fragments. Half-truths, carefully edited anecdotes, enough ambiguity to make people hesitate. One mutual friend finally called me directly. Look, he said, uncomfortable. I need to ask. Is it true you controlled all his money? No, I said flatly. He had his own bank accounts. Always did. He's saying you wouldn't let him buy things. I closed my eyes. He bought whatever he wanted. With his money. I paid more rent because I made more. That's it. There was a pause. Okay, he said. That's not what he's been telling people. That was the moment I realized staying silent wasn't noble. It was dangerous. So I did what I've always done when things get messy. I documented everything. Bank statements showing separate accounts. Payment histories showing the 70-30 rent split we'd explicitly agreed to. Venmo transactions where I reimbursed him for shared expenses. Text messages where we discussed finances calmly, rationally, as equals. Then I added the non-explicit messages between Mark and the woman he'd been cheating with, the ones that showed planning, anticipation, excitement. Not fear, not coercion, choice. I didn't post it publicly. I wasn't trying to destroy him. I just refused to let lies define me. When people asked, I sent them the evidence, quietly, directly. Most of them backed off. Some apologized. A few didn't respond at all. Those were the ones I lost. While I was managing that mess, the apartment situation escalated. Mark rejected the $2,500 buyout. His lawyer came back demanding $12,000 plus all shared furniture, claiming emotional damages from the public humiliation of the wedding collapse. My lawyer actually laughed when he read it. Emotional damages aren't a thing in lease disputes, he told me. They're fishing. We filed to break the lease, instead split the penalty and divide assets properly. A court date was set 6 weeks out. Apparently 6 weeks was too long for Mark. I came home from work one evening and immediately knew something was wrong. The apartment felt lighter. Wrong. The TV was gone. The PlayStation. My KitchenAid mixer. The living room rug. Artwork I'd purchased. Kitchen appliances. Electronics. Things I used daily. He'd left the couch, the bed, the bulky stuff. He'd taken the valuables. I filed a police report that night. The officer was dismissive. "This is a domestic situation," he said. "You're both on the lease. Civil matter." "I have receipts," I said. "Those items are mine." "Small claims court," he replied, already done with the conversation. So I added theft to the lawsuit. Mark's lawyer responded that he'd taken items he had equal claim to as a cohabitating partner planning to marry. My lawyer responded with receipts and a single line, "Return the items, or we pursue criminal charges." Nothing was returned. Then the dirty tricks started. Mark's mother called my workplace. Not my personal phone, not me. My office. She asked to speak to my supervisor and told him I was unstable, harassing her son, making threats. If I'd had a different boss, my life could have imploded all over again. Thankfully, my manager knew me. He called me in, told me exactly what had happened, and asked if everything was okay. I showed him the police report, the documentation. He made a note in my file that this was a personal legal matter and warned that any further contact from my ex's family would be considered harassment. I went home that night shaking not from sadness, but from anger. This wasn't about a breakup anymore. This was about survival. By the time the court date rolled around, I wasn't grieving the relationship anymore. That chapter had closed the moment I walked out of the venue in my wedding dress. What I was dealing with now was something colder, more exhausting, a slow grinding battle over boundaries, money, and the simple refusal to be treated like a fool. The apartment had become the center of it all. On paper, it was neutral territory, both our names on the lease. In reality, it was another place where Mark assumed I would bend just to make things easier for him. He had always relied on my willingness to be reasonable. What he didn't understand was that reasonableness has limits. After he cleaned out the electronics and valuables, my lawyer advised me to stop engaging directly. Everything went through legal channels now. No emotional appeals, no explanations, just facts. Mark's response through his lawyer was almost impressive in its audacity. He claimed the items he took were joint property acquired during cohabitation in anticipation of marriage. According to him, intent mattered more than receipts. According to him, I was punishing him for cheating by withholding assets. I remember reading that email twice, then setting my phone down and laughing. Not because it was funny, but because it was so detached from reality that it bordered on delusional. Receipts don't care about intent. While we waited for the hearing, the atmosphere around me shifted. Friends who had once been neutral started choosing sides. Some quietly distanced themselves, tired of the tension. Others checked in more often, offering support without asking invasive questions. I learned quickly who valued truth over comfort. Mark, on the other hand, leaned fully into victimhood. He told people I'd taken everything from him, that I was vindictive, that I was dragging things out instead of letting him move on. Never mind that he was the one who refused a clean buyout. Never mind that he was the one who took property that didn't belong to him. The court date arrived 6 weeks after the wedding. That wasn't. Mark showed up with both parents and his lawyer. I showed up with my documentation and a quiet resolve that surprised even me. Sitting there waiting to be called, I realized something unsettling. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. The judge reviewed everything methodically. The lease agreement, the payment records showing the 70-30 rent split, the bank statements, the receipts for the stolen items, the police report, The messages between Mark and his lawyer claiming ownership without evidence. When Mark's lawyer tried to pivot toward emotional distress, how the public nature of the wedding collapse had traumatized his client, the judge shut it down immediately. "This is a property and lease dispute," she said flatly. "Emotional distress is not relevant here." The ruling was clear. The lease would be broken. The penalty 2 months' rent split evenly, $3,000 each. I could keep the apartment for the remainder of the lease if I wanted, or we could both vacate. Mark was ordered to return the items he took or reimburse me their fair market value based on receipts. 14 days. When he started crying in the courtroom, it wasn't the quiet kind. It was loud, messy, designed to draw sympathy. His mother stood up, furious. "This is unfair," she shouted. "He's the victim here." The judge didn't even hesitate. "Ma'am, sit down. Your son took property documented as belonging to the plaintiff. That is not victim behavior." The bailiff stepped closer to her. Silence fell. Outside the courthouse, Mark's father approached me. It was the first time I'd seen him since the wedding. "You got what you wanted," he said bitterly. "Happy now." "I wanted a marriage," I replied. "I got betrayed. This is just cleaning up the mess." "She made a mistake," he said. "You're destroying him over it." "He destroyed us," I said calmly. "I'm just protecting what's mine." Behind him, Mark's mother shouted across the parking lot, "You're going to hell for this." I got in my car and drove away. 14 days passed. Nothing was returned. So my lawyer filed for the reimbursement judgment just over $4,000. It was approved without issue. Collecting it would be another story, but the record mattered. Consequences mattered. By then, I'd made my decision about the apartment. I was keeping it. I changed the locks the same day Mark officially vacated. Standing there in the quiet afterward, I realized the place felt different. Not empty, lighter. For the first time in months, the space belonged to me. Once the court ruling was finalized, the noise around my life changed. Not disappeared, just shifted. The frantic calls stopped. The legal threats evaporated. What remained was the slow, unglamorous reality of consequences settling in where denial used to live. Mark didn't return a single item. Not the television, not the gaming console, not the kitchen appliances he'd helped himself to, as if theft could be justified by proximity. When the 14-day deadline passed without a word, my lawyer filed to enforce the judgment. It was approved quickly. Collecting the money, he warned me, could take months or even years if Mark didn't have it, but the judgment would follow him. Credit reports, employment checks, loan applications. It would sit there quiet and permanent until paid. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt tired. Around that same time, the other marriage finally collapsed. The woman who had exposed the affair reached out again. She told me the divorce was finalized. She got the house. He was paying alimony. His world had imploded in the way worlds do when lies can no longer hold their shape. According to her, when his life fell apart, he tried crawling back to Mark. That detail made me pause. Apparently, Mark told him to get lost, not out of loyalty to anyone, but because the fantasy had died. The man who'd promised everything had delivered nothing. The affair that once felt thrilling now looked exactly like what it was, a dead end. Mark posted something vague online about knowing your worth and not settling. The irony didn't sting the way I thought it would. It just confirmed something I'd already accepted: accountability was never coming. His parents tried one last tactic. His father called me voice, suddenly reasonable, almost gentle. He offered to pay the judgment if I'd let this go and stop pursuing their son. "The collection agency is handling it," I told him. "It's out of my hands." "We can settle this like adults," he said. "Adults don't steal property and cry victim afterward," I replied. "You're vindictive," he snapped. Maybe I said calmly, "but I'm not wrong." He hung up. By then, I'd already hired a collection agency. They'd take a percentage of whatever they recovered, but I didn't care. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about closure, written in ink, not apologies that would never come. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned Mark's wages were being garnished. He made around $2,400 a month. The agency could take up to 25% of his disposable income. $300, $400 at a time. Slow, uncomfortable, unavoidable. The apartment, meanwhile, was becoming something new. I replaced what was gone gradually, not all at once. A new rug, a different couch layout, art that didn't remind me of conversations that never mattered. I painted over the accent wall we'd chosen together. The color felt like reclaiming territory. Socially, the dust settled. I lost a handful of friends who preferred the comfort of Mark's version over the inconvenience of the truth. I kept the ones who mattered. I made new ones through a recreational sports league I joined on a whim just to get out of my head. My family stayed solid. My mother checked in often, her way of asking if I was okay without forcing me to talk when I didn't want to. My sister took me out for dinner one night and said, "You didn't dodge a bullet. You dodged a catastrophe." She wasn't wrong. Work remained stable. Mark's mother never called my office again. Once harassment becomes documented, bullies tend to retreat. Emotionally, things were uneven. Some days I was fine, focused, productive, grounded. Other days I was angry about the money. The wasted time, the lies layered so carefully, I hadn't seen them until they collapsed all at once. Therapy helped. Having people who believed me helped more. I wasn't dating. I tried apps briefly, went on a couple of conversations that went nowhere. My therapist said that was normal. Trust doesn't regenerate on a schedule. And then there was the wedding video. The photographers had sent everything, every angle, every reaction. The exact moment the wife stood up. My face as I read the texts, Mark's breakdown, the murmurs rippling through the guests. It was surreal to watch. I showed it to exactly 3 people, my lawyer, my sister, and my therapist, not for revenge, not for validation, for proof. Proof that I hadn't imagined it. Proof that this really happened. 2 months passed, after the wedding, that never was, and life began to settle into something quieter. Not easier, just steadier. The chaos that had consumed every conversation and thought finally loosened its grip, leaving behind space. Space to think, space to feel, space to rebuild. Financially, the damage was done. When I added everything up one last time, the numbers still stung. Roughly $28,000 lost on a wedding that ended before the ink on the vows could dry. A decent used car, a chunk of savings I'd built carefully over years. But I wasn't broken. I adjusted my budget, cut back where I could, started funneling money back into savings slowly but deliberately. I set a goal 2 years to fully recover what I'd lost. Seeing progress, even small amounts, grounded me. It reminded me that this chapter hadn't ruined me. It had just cost me. Emotionally, the recovery was messier. Some days I woke up feeling light, almost relieved. Other days, anger crept in unexpectedly at the wasted time, the lies, the fact that someone could stand beside me, planning a future while actively destroying it. Therapy helped me untangle that. My therapist framed it simply: I wasn't mourning Mark. I was mourning the person I thought he was. That distinction mattered. Through the grapevine, I heard how Mark was doing. He'd moved back in with his parents. Same retail management job. Wages being garnished monthly. According to mutual acquaintances, he was telling people he'd learned and grown from the experience and was focusing on himself. No apology. No acknowledgement of the theft. No remorse for the affair. Just vague personal growth language designed to sound reflective without actually taking responsibility. That told me everything I needed to know. The woman who exposed the affair checked in once more. Her divorce was finalized. She sounded lighter, stronger. She told me she didn't regret exposing the truth even though the timing had been explosive. "Better you found out at the altar than after signing the papers," she said. She was right. Socially, my world looked different now. Smaller, cleaner. I stopped explaining myself to people who wanted drama more than truth. I stopped trying to control how others perceived me. The ones who mattered had seen the evidence. The rest didn't get access to me anymore. Dating still wasn't a priority. I wasn't lonely. I was cautious. Trust, I learned, isn't something you rush back into just to prove you're okay. It rebuilds quietly in moments where someone shows consistency instead of charm. The apartment lease was down to its final 6 months. I'd already started looking at new places. Something smaller, something entirely mine. No shared memories embedded in the walls. A clean slate. The anger softened over time. It didn't disappear, but it lost its sharp edges. It stopped driving my decisions. That felt like progress. I wasn't healed yet, but I was moving forward. Stop. Part 7. Closure without apology. 3 weeks ago, Mark texted me from a new number. I'd blocked the old one. "I hope you're happy," the message read. "You destroyed my life." I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. "I hope you find peace and a better understanding of consequences." Then I blocked that number too. I wasn't happy he was struggling, but I wasn't responsible for it either. He made choices. I made mine. We were both living with the results. The collection agency continued doing its work. Slowly, methodically, the judgment stayed on his record. That mattered. Accountability doesn't need an audience, it just needs permanence. The apartment felt peaceful now, familiar in a new way. Still, I knew I wouldn't stay much longer. When the lease ended, I planned to move. Downtown, maybe. A one-bedroom that belonged only to me from day one. A fresh start without ghosts. I lost a few friends through this. People who preferred a version of events where betrayal was forgivable as long as it was inconvenient to confront. I kept the ones who showed up without conditions. I made new connections through work, through sports, through simply saying yes to life again. My family stayed close. My mother still asked if I was okay, which was really her way of asking if I was hurting. The honest answer surprised even me. I wasn't sad about losing Mark. I was sad about losing who I thought he was, and those aren't the same thing. Work thrived. Therapy continued. Trust rebuilt slowly inward before outward. I stopped replaying the wedding video in my head. Stopped wondering what signs I'd missed. Stopped blaming myself for trusting someone who had every incentive to lie well. The last thing I learned from all of this was simple but hard-earned: if something feels off, investigate. Don't ignore red flags just because you're invested, and never confuse forgiveness with self-erasure. The chapter closed the moment I walked away from the altar. The next one hasn't been written yet, and that's okay.